Hello and welcome back to Foreign Correspondents. I'm Somi Sodang and joining me here in the studio is our panel of foreign journalists. Happy New Year!
Happy New Year!
Happy New Year!
Happy New Year to be here.
Every year at around this time, many Koreans gather to spend time with their extended family. So on this week's edition of Foreign Correspondents, we take a closer look at the changing landscape of the Lunar New Year holiday in modern-day Korea and also discuss the more philosophical questions regarding the true meaning of family. Many South Koreans typically observe New Year's Day according to the lunar calendar as well as the Gregorian calendar. And Seollal, as it is called, is one of the biggest national holidays celebrated in the country. So when it comes to Seollal, what are some of the first images that come to mind?
For me personally, it's dokguk, like the rice cake soup that you traditionally eat when you celebrate the New Year. And really back in the days, also people turned 1 year older with the traditional New Year, like moon calendar. What else? And for me, to be honest, in reality, it's also work because when usually the Korean population has their holidays, I will fill in for news shifts. Actually, for me, it doesn't change, so mostly I work.
Right. And for you, Frank?
Well, for me, I think of two things, and they have to do with traffic. So I think of a massive traffic jam.
Exodus out of Seoul.
Exodus out of Seoul. And then I think of there being no traffic in Seoul and easier to get around within the city.
So you like that?
Yeah, I like that. It's nice to have a little bit more space if you go out to a cafe or a restaurant or just walking around town to see, just to feel a little bit, I don't know, more relaxed.
Yeah, the pace is a lot slower during those periods.
For me, the image that strikes me when I think of Seollal is the mountains of food that my family-in-law, my mother-in-law would prepare. And basically, I remember eating when I try to remember Seollal.
Now, Seollal is usually observed over a 3-day period, right? You have Seollal in the middle and then a break day before and after that. And with the addition of weekends and vacation days from work, sometimes it can stretch out to a week-long holiday period. The government has afforded 3 days off for Seollal so that people, if they need to, can travel to and from their hometown. On which holiday do the French people usually gather traditionally with their extended families?
Christmas, really.
Christmas.
Definitely. Christmas is the moment of the year when even if you live far, you will come back to your hometown to see your parents, your brother, sister, even cousin and grandparents. This is that moment, a very important moment of the year. Yeah.
Okay. And what's the biggest holiday?
I think it's quite similar to France. Christmas is definitely the most family-like holiday. And even for me, sometimes I miss out on summer holidays to go to Germany, but definitely there was, in my whole life, there's been only one Christmas that I have not spent with my parents. So for me, it centers around my parents and my twin brother and also my aunts and uncle. But my grandparents are unfortunately dead, but if they were still alive, I guess they would rather travel to my parents' place and do some holidays there. But sometimes it's also the other way around. Actually, there are not so many cousins. It's basically every family can do it individually how they want it.
Right, right.
For us, when I was a child, there were two sort of families, the sisters, and each year it would rotate from one to the other. On Christmas Day,
so
there would be
hosting
who would be hosting the family gathering, and it would be like a dozen people. My cousins and my aunts and uncles would all be at that gathering to have a big turkey dinner on Christmas Day. Now it's my brother and my sisters, and it more depends on who has the biggest oven to cook the biggest turkey and wants to put on the full turkey dinner. I haven't done it yet because in Korea they tend to not have very big ovens, and it's difficult to get a turkey here. And also everybody, of course, would have to come over here. But my brother has cooked a turkey, I think, on 1 or 2 occasions, which I have to catch up to him at some point.
All right. Now, these family reunions, holidays, they ideally should be a very stress-free, happy, optimistic time. But unfortunately, many South Koreans feel very uncomfortable about their personal questions, which they can seem prying, invasive, and even overbearing. So what are some major conversation topics that usually pop up during the holiday family gatherings?
Usually Christmas is a time where you reflect, you contemplate, and don't really do much productive. You're basically calming down, except for the eating. And you have long table conversations because the family gets together around dinner time. And sometimes, even though I haven't seen my parents in a long time, and I want to make everything harmonic and perfect, then sometimes you have a small stupid argument. But I really put a lot of effort that those fights do not escalate, and I think that's usually never happens. But sometimes, for example, I would get my mother asking, "Don't you want to soon move back to Germany?" And she would really like it, but she makes it in a very subtle way and respects my decision. Or let's say my father, sometimes he would say, I'm in the company that I know, they have a really nice job in public relations. Wouldn't that be something more secure for you?
Yeah.
And sometimes I find this mildly annoying, but we are all grown-up persons, so I know their intention is really well and good meaning.
We know that their intentions are well and good. Now, despite the breakdown in South Korea's nuclear family structure, it appears that the parent-child relationships, it's becoming more codependent than ever, as seen by the newly coined term Kangaroo Tribe. Do you feel that South Korean parents care for and look after their children to a far greater degree and to a far longer time compared to, say, families in other cultures?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, so I would say Korean parents, if I generalize, they're rather protective, and sometimes I have the feeling they really project lots of their hopes and expectations into their children. And I think it also relates to maybe there's some Confucian aspects to it, but also the birth rate is relatively small. So if you have one child, then maybe you have a lot of pressure, give them a lot of pressure or her a lot of pressure. But in Germany, I would say the age when people, for example, move out is relatively low, because the initiation of growing up also means you stand on your own, you move out. And interestingly, there's a retrend, a trend backwards. So nowadays, the age of the children who still live with their parents is increasing and increasing. That has economic reasons because of increasing rents, but also it means some kind of tradition and appreciation of the parents too. But the average age is 24. That's relatively low. Also in the European context, Italy, for example, it's 31 for male.
In France, I think it's similar with Germany. Usually, as soon as you get a job and you can be financially independent, even if you're not married or you're single, you buy or you rent a house and you live by yourself. And there actually 10 or 15 years ago, there was a movie named Tanguy, which was very popular. And it was the story of a guy who doesn't want to leave the house, and his parents try everything to kick him out, so they finally can have their own time. And the movie is pretty funny.
There was this case in the United States where a 30-something-year-old man, his parents were trying to kick him out.
Right.
And then he sued them in court to be able to stay living with them, because he said he had established some rules and habits that he should expect to be carried on indefinitely. But they won the lawsuit and ended up being able to get him out of the house. My mother basically kicked me out when I was 19 or 20. And I think that was probably the best thing for me. It was one of those sink or swim type of things. And I know that, I take my daughter Audrey to swimming. And I remember one mother taking her 3 or 4-year-old and throwing him into the pool, right? And then he'd climb out and she'd throw him in again. And he ended up being a little bit better swimmer. But I couldn't do that. And I worry about also, my wife too. My wife's Korean, and she really kind of has a careful eye on our daughter. And I wonder if we're not going here in South Korea from having helicopter moms to having drone moms.
Following you everywhere.
Yes.
Yeah. Do you think it's becoming a social problem? Because you mentioned Dongi, and also in Germany as well, people, the age at which they become financially independent, or even if they are financially independent, the age at which they leave their parents' house is increasing generally all over the world. Do you think that in itself is becoming a social problem?
I'm not sure. I think it depends. It's getting more difficult to do things like purchase a home, and also so you're going to save a lot of money if you stay living at home. Also, in terms of developing your career, you need a higher level of education. And so that involves more expenses than it did, when I was growing up. So I think there might be some other forces at play here that are encouraging young people to stay at home longer. I don't know if all of those are beneficial, though.
I mean, in the past, a lot of different generations were living under the same roof.
Yeah.
And I think there should be no rule as long as people find a way to live that they're happy with. And fine, if you're happy to stay with your parents and your grandparents and your children, and if you, why not? Or if you want to be alone when you turn 20, why not either? I mean, I think there should be no rule as long as everybody can have a happy life.
And I think there's a concern also, like you sort of pointed that, if everybody kind of agrees to that. But sometimes what you have is maybe one of the children will be kind of abusing the largesse of the parents to stay at home longer than they could and won't be encouraged to go out and make a way for themselves. And that was the fear, I think, of my mother. She was like, I'm not going to have this young man that's not going to university staying at home and not really working just to, get free rent and free food. You're out of here if you're not in school.
That was the policy at our house. You're either going to school or going to work.
Yeah. So I think that encouraged me to buckle down a little bit more and be a little bit more productive.
We know in Japan it's a problem, right? There is a whole movement of young people who basically never leave their house, not even their room in their parents' house. And then, it's clearly a problem because you have to stand on your own in society sooner or later, because at one point your parents are gonna die.
Yeah, but that's pretty extreme. It's just a symptom of some kind of other issue, mental issue, social issue. It's not, I really think you can have a very healthy and happy life by staying with your parents and your grandparents. I mean,
Sure,
So that in itself is not an issue.
Yeah, I totally agree with you. And I think we have kind of a, sometimes a distorted perspective of everybody having to fit into that classic thing where you move out of school, out from home right after you finish university and things like that. Whereas, I think that living with a larger family in a bigger home or something like that is totally okay, as long as there aren't people that are kind of using that to avoid doing their share.
Facing the reality or facing the real world. But on the note of living with many generations, I think when you live with so many generations under the same roof, it does give you a certain set of social skills that you might not acquire otherwise. So it does have added benefits for sure.
Yeah, and one benefit I can think as a young father is that when your parents-in-law or when your own parents are home, it really helps because they can take care of the kids. And sometimes when you have to work, when you have to take care of your two kids and when your wife is working too, it's tough. It helps to live with other people.
Because in Korea as well, more and more elderly people are now being semi-forced to help out in caring for their grandchildren as well, especially if the adult children's couple, both of them are working full-time. Is it common to see grandmas and grandpas helping out with the rearing of their grandchildren in France as well?
Once again, I will talk only from my family, but yes, since all my uncles and aunts and cousins live in the same area, I mean, my mother always has some kids at home that one of my cousins is sick, or the kid is sick, I mean, they need help. Yes, it's really, very, very common.
Yeah, and she enjoys that
Yes,
role?
she does, yeah.
What about in Germany?
Yeah, usually it's the grandmothers who really enjoy that, so I think it's a really good thing. And when I see that in Korea also, I really like the appreciation of the tradition. However, I know many cases where, let's say, Korean colleagues in the journalism industry who are really busy, they basically see their children on the weekends only because they grow up during the week at their grandparents. And I don't think that's ideal because first, the society should, provide options for child caring opportunities, and I mean the relation to the mother and the father figure. I think that's really important, and only see them on the weekend. I think it's not enough.
Now, many experts say that the so-called helicopter moms, who oversee and micromanage every aspect of their child's lives, result in adult children incapable of living independent lives. So how can we find that happy middle ground as parents of providing enough care, support, guidance, and also letting them grow up to be independent adults?
It's a tough one. I mean, as a young father, I don't know. I wish I knew. That's a question I ask myself all the time. My kids are still small, but I'm really wondering how I will manage to protect them and at the same time teach them how to survive in this world. I'm not really so much a fan as your solution of like throwing the baby in the swimming pool and let him swim back. But I don't know. I think you just have to be smart and sensitive and try your best. And I think.
Do you use how you were brought up as sort of the yardstick?
That's a good question. It's not that easy. I mean, I grew up in a countryside. Where I live, it used to be very safe. I remember going back from school by walking by myself from a very young age. I cannot really do that in Seoul, for example.
Circumstances are very different.
And it's a bit difficult to apply my own childhood to the childhood of my children.
Frank, how old are your children?
My daughter's just going to turn 5 this year, and I always remember how I was brought up, and I try to apply little things to bring up Audrey, but then I question whether that was the best thing for her or not. And again, it's an internal thing. One thing that I do question here, I remember a news assistant once told me once she turned a certain age, like when she finished university or something, suddenly, very suddenly, the interest that her mother took in the decisions that she made was released. It was like suddenly the leash came off. And she confessed to me, she said, that was a bad idea, right? Because she really didn't know how to, she had no experience really handling, her own affairs or big decisions independently. And she felt that it might have been better if she got a little bit more control over her own life a little bit earlier on in that transition into fully independent. Living was a gradual one.
Yeah. Now, the traditional family model used to be parents and some children. But that is now changing. So what do you think is the biggest reason behind the change?
I think it's changing because the society is changing. I mean, our societies are becoming more and more individualistic. The mobility is changing a lot. I mean, I married somebody from the other half of the planet, so people move a lot. And there is as well change now, for example, in France recently there was a huge debate after France decided to legalize gay marriage. And many conservative, usually Catholic Christians say, oh, you cannot have a family like 2 fathers or 2 mothers, this is not family. And I think, of course, it's wrong. I think as long as you consider somebody that is your family, then that's a family. I mean, I don't think there should be specific rule, and I think it will continue to change the idea of family.
So coming back to that idea of what constitutes a family, according to the South Korean law, family members comprise those who share a direct bloodline, so siblings, parents, as well as one's spouse. But in countries like Sweden, France, and the United States, the scope is a little bit wider to include cohabiting partners who are, for example, not married. How is family defined legally in Germany?
I mean, there's a conservative, the traditional family with a married couple and children. And then you can also have adopted children, of course. And if, let's say, you have patchwork families, that can also include that. But it's based on the bloodline, and then it adds some like new forms of family. So that's the legal definition. On the social definition, it has changed a lot. I know many friends who define their family now very loosely, like the people that they go out with or the people from their sports club or whatever.
Okay, what about in Canada, the legal definition?
Well, the legal definition is a cohabiting couple and their children. And that couple can be from the opposite sex or the same sex, and it has to do with their living together.
And self-identification as...
Yes, you couldn't just be flatmates. They're not just people that live together or that are roommates, but they're people that identify themselves as a couple.
And is it the same deal in France?
It's exactly the same in France, yes.
Okay.
It's Canada.
Now, do you think, we've mentioned, different same-sex families, or you coined the term patchwork families. Then do you think we need to change the social definition of family now that the traditional model is somewhat being eroded and it's moving away from that?
Probably, especially to avoid discrimination, to let everybody who wants to be a family, even if it doesn't fit the traditional sense of the world, and if they want to be a family, I think it's necessary to expand the definition of it.
And I think that's happening too, if you look around the world, especially in developed countries and in Canada that's taking place. There's a greater acceptance of people of other genders and their relationships and their definition of and Canada's definition of what a family is.
Okay. Then back to the issue of single-person households. With so many people choosing to live on their own, not get married, not have children, even if they do get married, or even if they do live with their family, not living with their extended family members, how do you think a family will remain an important unit, a social unit in the future?
I think more than ever, yeah.
More than ever.
Especially because of that, because we are living in more individualistic society, because we are going to work on the other side of the world, because if for you professional reason you have to move from one city to another, and we live as well in societies that I think they are more and more unequal and more difficult to live. So the family links, the bonds that you have within the family are more important than ever if you want to be happy, if you want to survive even. So I think the family will, even though it will be changed and it will evolve, but I think it will stay as what makes us maybe human, what makes society the pillar of the society.
An important part of the human experience.
Yeah, in response to your question, I'm a little bit more concerned about what's happening here in South Korea with so many people living by themselves. When we talked earlier about how people live in extended families or big families and live at home, I think that the family becomes a check on a person's social development, in that family members will be looking at the other members of the family and provide them with social assistance and you know, therapeutic counseling opportunities on a daily basis.
Right.
Whereas when you're living alone, your social network is, you know, more defined by the electronics that you have in your phone, in your home, your television set, and your hand phone, or whatever else may be. And so my concern is that a person's psychological development is so affected by those people around them. If we eliminate those people and everybody's living by themselves, our individual psychological development is going to be affected, I believe, in a very negative way. So I like the idea of people living with their families.
I think you have a point there, Frank, but we should see that we should not blame the individual. It's more like a problem of the society. So we should change the circumstances why people choose to live a single lifestyle. And I know many happy singles. I think it works for some people. And it doesn't necessarily mean that you feel lonely. You can also define your social relationships over anything else than just family. And you don't have to live with someone else too. So I think it's maybe not as extreme as you pointed it out.
Okay, well, we have to wrap it up there. So for our last question, amid this ever-changing model of the traditional family, what would be your new definition of the word family?
I'm not too sure if we really need a definition. If you consider somebody your family, if you feel like the bond with this person is strong enough and is stronger than anything else, or that and you're ready to sacrifice a lot for that person, I think that in itself show that this person is family. And I think maybe you should not try too hard to put definition on it and let people decide by themselves. Maybe that will avoid some discrimination, and that will let people just be more happy this way.
Right. I like that idea, defined by the actions. Yeah.
For me, I would, for my personal definition of family, and those that I consider my family are people that I would do just about anything for. And people that I've made that extra commitment to be probably a part of my life for, you know, much of my life. And those are the people that I define as family, I guess.
Okay.
One definition that works for me and which I really like is family are those people that you spend time with and feel at home with. And home, for example, in German, there's a word called Heimat that is very stronger than home. It also means like emotionally at home. And so I think if you really have that strong connection, then that's family.
Okay, all right. We'll have to wrap it up there. Thank you very much for sharing your thoughts and
Good to be
your
here.
experiences. And Happy New Year.
Yes, Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Happy New Year.
Renowned American writer Richard Bach, who authored some of the best-selling books of the 1970s, including Jonathan Livingston Seagull, had this to say about the importance of family. The bond that links your true family is not one of blood, but of respect and joy in each other's life. We wish you all a very happy New Year. Thank you for tuning in, and goodbye.